Hi guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we are doing the best and most disappointing films of 2021. It won't be me physically talking to you. Well, it will, but it won't. You won't see me during the video. It'll be clips, it'll be pictures, talking about all the films of 2021. Now, this is based on films that I have watched. Things like Ghostbusters Afterlife is not there because I haven't watched it yet. So if there's a movie that I haven't seen that's not on the list, that is why. I am not going to judge a film based on things that I've heard about it. I'm judging films based on what I have seen throughout the year. That's what this video is, and it's just my opinion, so you don't need to kill me if you don't like the fact that I like a film that you don't like, or that I don't like a film that you do like. Just my opinion. So, let's get right to it with films of 2021. So yeah, today we are talking about all the movies of 2021. That's all the good, all the bad, and everything in between. You know, there's been a lot of films out this year. Well, last year now. We're talking 2021 now, and we're in 2022. And we are going to start talking about the worst films of 2021. But before I go on, I do want to point out that this is just my opinion, and there are spoilers ahead for multiple films. So, if you haven't watched any of these films, I would stay clear of this video. Not really something I should be telling you to do. But anyway, let's get right to it with the bad films of the year. And we are going to start talking about Space Jam: New Legacy. This is one of the most disappointing films of the year for me. I was so excited to hear that they were going to do a sequel to Space Jam. One of my all-time favourite films. Is it in my top 10? No. But it's definitely one that got nostalgia feelings for when I rewatch it with the little one. So it's just like, it's so disappointing for me to have to put this in the bad section of the list today. Unfortunately, it just doesn't do anything new. And they really do push all of these Easter eggs and references to Warner Brother properties. Just something that I'm not intrigued for. And I think it really does slow down the pace and the story of the actual film itself. And unfortunately, I just cannot put it in the good section. Moving on to a film that, while I did enjoy watching, definitely is some big problems, and it definitely feels like it's not part of that set of films, and it's the last film that I actually watched of last year, and that is Matrix Resurrections. Unfortunately, this one just didn't do it for me. It felt so different to what we've had in the previous films. Not saying that I want a carbon copy of the original film series. The Matrix is not something that I rate too highly. The first Matrix film is absolutely brilliant, but unfortunately, it just doesn't do it justice. And Matrix Resurrections just has so many problems within the film. However, I did enjoy myself watching it, so it's probably in the par of bad and good. But unfortunately, it's not good enough to go into the good section. Another film, one that I was looking forward to, but again felt like I needed more, was Paranormal Activity: Next of Kin. A completely restructured film series here with this film. Completely changes everything we've known about Paranormal Activity with the way that they do everything. There's no ghostly goings on, it's more monster feature sort of thing with a little bit of ghost in there. Unfortunately, it is too much of a change from the original film series. Like, Paranormal Activity films are a guilty pleasure for me. There's not one of those films I don't enjoy. Unfortunately, this is the first of the film series that I've actually not enjoyed. Hence why it's in the bad section. Another film that I was really looking forward to now, and unfortunately didn't do anything for me, is Spiral. Spiral was something that was really targeted as being something like a new chapter in the Saw series. Unfortunately, that new chapter is one that we've seen before. It's formatted, the formula is very much reminiscent of what we've had before. And unfortunately, it's just not something that resonates with me well enough to actually be put any higher than what we've got in the previous films. The ending was very contrived with what we've had before in the series. There was nothing new to the twist. It's just the same old bullshit, unfortunately. Is it a bad film though? Again, it's one of those, it's like The Matrix, it's somewhere in between the good and bad, but I think it leans more into the bad, unfortunately, and that's why Spiral is in this list. By the way, this is not technically a list, it's just a set of films that I want to talk about, and there's no particular order for it. Next up, we're going to talk about Old, and Old was one of those films like, M. Night Shyamalan, typical shit. However, this film just really disappointed me big time. There was nothing new to it. The twist at the end was pretty predictable. And I didn't get much of a feeling to this film. The way it was done and everything, it's an enjoyable watch once, but it's just that M. Night Shyamalan problem of there having to be a confusing ending, and it was just disappointing. So that is why that's in the bad, and we are moving on. Now, a film that when I watched the initial first one, didn't get much feeling from it, but was based on re-watches, I actually enjoyed. However, the sequel to this film, for me, is not one that I'm going to enjoy it's not one that I'm going to enjoy on rewatch, and that is Escape Room 2. This Tournament of Champions. A little bit disappointing for me. Felt like there should have been more to it. I just came out of watching the film wanting more, and wanting more, of a tighter story. Unfortunately, it's a bit all over the place, and not one that I enjoyed. Speaking of films that actually, we got a new film, original story, I was looking very much forward to. Angelina Jolie was in there, John Bernthal was in there. So, there was Michael Holt's in there as well. Nicholas Hoult even, sorry. This film in particular is one that I actually was really looking forward to, and unfortunately is another one that falls dead, and that is Those Who Wish Me Dead. Unfortunately, it just feels like there should be more to it. It's over before you know it. While the ride itself, the journey and the actual film itself is actually pretty decent, but when you look on it from the whole, there is some problems with it. Again, this is one of those in between good and bad. Was almost in my good. Unfortunately, it's probably, if this were a list, this would be at the bottom of the bad. Or an honourable mention, as they say. But unfortunately, big disappointment, and not one that I can see myself revisiting every now and then. You get some films that, give you new ideas and things like that, and you want to revisit them every now and then. Something like Tomorrow War is one that I would love to revisit down the line. Was that a film that came out this year? Because this is not on my list. I'll get back to you on that one. But anyway, moving on to another bad film of the year, and this one is the most disappointing in my eyes. Actually, you know what? I'm going to leave this one till last, because it's the one that's most disappointing me. Moving on to Thunder Force. Thunder Force was one that, I love Melissa McCarthy, and I love those kind of films that she does. However, Thunder Force was very disappointing. It's a very bad film. It's something that feels like it should have been brought out in the early 2000s sort of era of bad superhero movie sort of thing. It's boring. It's the worst I can think about. It is boring film. Another one that I was hoping to put in the good, but ended up in the bad is one that I wanted more from, and that's Boss Level. Again, not necessarily a bad film, but it just feels like by the end of it, you're sort of like, oh, is that it? Again, you know, contrived problems within the film does give it its issues, and unfortunately that's why Boss Level is on this list. One next that I want to talk about is Snake Eyes. Snake Eyes is an absolute awful film. I was so bored watching it. You know, I had minimum hopes for it that it would be a decent or an half decent film, and there are some decent parts in there. Unfortunately, this is not one that's going to revitalise the G.I. Joe franchise, as G.I. Joe films have always felt a little bit hit or miss. You know, the initial G.I. Joe film I quite enjoyed, Retaliation not so much, but Snake Eyes is the worst of it all. It sort of feels like what X-Men Origins Wolverine is to this G.I. Joe universe. Like, it was meant to set up sort of the starting point of all of these characters within the G.I. Joe universe, but unfortunately it just does not work within a film, and it's just, yeah, it's awful. Another one, again, that I wish I could have put on a good list, because I really enjoyed the first one, and the reasons why I disappoint with this one's one I'm going to talk about probably the most in this video, on the disappointment side, is Venomous Carnage. There is so much they missed out on this film. For starters, Carnage. You know, there's some good and there's some bad with Carnage in this film. Something which I may talk about in a separate video down the line. But however, like, it's a very short film. Doesn't give you a lot of content between Venom and Carnage. There's literally one fight at the end, and it's quite meh. You know, you know, they could have done with so much more, though. You know, 10 minutes here or there, a fight scene. The story with Venom going off on his own as well was very contrived. I didn't like that moment in the film. I would have felt like maybe if Venom and Carnage had a fight before that moment, and the fight didn't go well, and Venom had to run off, you know, sort of escape, and then Eddie and Venom had a disagreement during it, that would have made sense. However, unfortunately, it just sort of, you know, the relationship between Eddie and Venom in this film sort of feels like middle ground, sort of feels like the middle film of the series of films, where it's like, a little bit like Halloween Kills, it just sort of like fits in the middle of a bigger story. I'm hoping they can pull it off with Venom 3 and give us a Spider-Man, but obviously that isn't going to be Tom Holland based on the end credits of Spider-Man No Way Home. So I'm hoping maybe it's Andrew Garfield. That would be amazing, pun intended. But yeah, Venom Carnage is just disappointing. You know, so again, not a terrible film. I found myself enjoying it, but again, I've watched it twice, and every time I've watched it, I watched it in the cinema, I've watched it at home, and every time I've watched it, I just felt like, where is the rest of it? There's so much, like an extra half hour could have just fixed the pacing. It could have fixed little bits of story here and there. Unfortunately, Venom Let There Be Carnage does not do that. But the most disappointing, the absolute worst film of the year, one that I actually really had high hopes for, and then I saw the trailer and it completely destroyed every thought I ever had about this, Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City. It's so disappointing. They had so much material to go off, but they did it all at once. It was really stuffed you with information from the video games that if you haven't played the video games, you wouldn't have any clue whatsoever what's going on. You know, there are so many little tidbits and little things here and there that point towards the video games, and unfortunately, it sort of delves too much into those that have played the video games to know what's going on. But then they also dumb it down as well, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work very well at all, and I think it's the most disappointing film of the year. So that's all the bad films, you know, that's all the films that I really didn't like this year. Again, if there's any films that you think should be on the bad list that I haven't talked about yet, you know, it's because I haven't watched them. However, we are going to move on now to the good side of the year. As I said, we're moving on now to the movies of 2021 that I enjoyed. While it is a smaller list, it's a bigger list as well. Because there are some really great movies in this that we've had in the past year that just don't get talked about. There's one in particular that I feel like needs to get rejoiced a little bit more. It's a very underappreciated film from a very well appreciated series of films, you know. So I do feel like there are some films here that are going to be really contrived with yourselves. However, again, this is just my opinion. We are going to go in a different direction here, where I'm going to be talking up to the best film. Similar, whereas I didn't really do a list for the last set, this list, there's a little bit more structure to it. It does go better and better and better as you go along. So, one of the films that I absolutely love this year, again, it's one of the ones that surprised me a little bit, and that's Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi surprised me because, again, it was sort of like the Guardians of the Galaxy sort of feeling behind it. Who is this character? Who are those characters? That's how I felt with Guardians of the Galaxy, and that's how I felt with Shang-Chi. And I left the theatre absolutely loving this film. There was no doubt in my eyes that this film was absolutely brilliant. And yeah, again, you know, I absolutely love it. You know, there's nothing more to say about it. There's some cameos in there that, you know, you're going to enjoy along the way. There's also some little tidbits here and there as well. I do think it also opens up a bigger section of the multiverse. Not the multiverse, but like the universe that we live in the MCU. It definitely opens up some doors. I'm looking forward to seeing where those doors lead in the next few years. Next up, we do have the Suicide Squad. Again, the last Suicide Squad film we got, completely awful. There is no doubt in my mind, I hate that film. However, this one, I really enjoyed. You know, I enjoy the changes to the series of film, you know, the characters. I enjoy every little bit of this film. While it's not my favourite all-time film of the year, and would definitely be lower on the list, hence why it's down here, whereas Shang-Chi would be somewhere in between that hefty amount of the list. But this is one that I absolutely love, and I'm so glad that James Wan was able to make this film. While when he was asked, of course, to come along to DC when the whole Marvel dispute happened, I apologise for this. By the way, I apologise for the background sound. It is very echoey in here where I'm recording this, but unfortunately we can't do anything about that. I will just try to adjust it in editing. But anyway, yeah, like what they do with this and what James Gunn was able to do with this is just brilliant, and I'm so glad that we got it. Another film that I absolutely adored this year was Black Widow. Again, while not being one of the strongest MCU films, and they did some stuff with Taskmaster that I really didn't like, I still enjoyed the film. It's one that I actually plan to watch very soon again, simply because I've only watched it once, and maybe I will get a different feeling after the second time watching it. Unfortunately, there are some things they do in it that I don't like. However, I do think it's a very good film. It's a very decent film, and one that I look forward to watching again, possibly today. Next up on the list is one of a guilty pleasure series of mine, where I actually find myself loving every single one of these films, even when they're not that good. And that's Fast and Furious 9. Fast 9, Furious 9, whatever you want to call it. Fast and Furious 9 is a great film. You know, again, it's not the best in the series. I still think that one goes to 5 and 6. However, I do think this one does some stuff in there that I enjoy. The space stuff is a little bit weird. However, it's sort of, you know, it's something that I can actually enjoy a little bit, because I know how crazy these films are. And I'm actually quite thankful that we did get Fast 9, because, you know, we've got Fast 10 and 11 coming up, which are going to be the last of the film series. Unfortunately, there is some dispute between Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Vin Diesel, where Dwayne Johnson won't be returning, which is unfortunate. But I cannot wait to see what they do going ahead. And I really enjoyed F9, while there are some issues in there. A film that, when I found out it was coming out, was very late on. I didn't realise this was even being made or this was even a thing. But Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Gal Gadot, and Ryan Reynolds all star in Red Notice. Red Notice is an absolutely brilliant film. I absolutely loved it, you know. And that surprise ending where Dwayne Johnson is actually with Gal Gadot and it is actually one of the ones that's like a faith. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And I look forward to seeing if they do a sequel. There is plans apparently to do a sequel. And I cannot wait to see where they go with that. Another film where I think people are pretty on the bad side for this film. However, I fully agree that this is one of the best films of the year. And it is Malignant. I absolutely love Malignant. I love what James Wan. Hang on, did I say James Wan earlier for... It's James Gunn for Suicide Squad. James Wan for this film. Apologise for that. Yeah, James Wan. What James Wan was able to do with a new idea, while also putting in some of the old stuff, was absolutely brilliant. I love this film. Very underrated, and definitely one that you should catch if you haven't watched it. Another one. As we move on, we are in sort of an horror realm at the moment, and we'll get back to horror later on as well, with a little break in between. But another horror film that I think is very much underrated as well is The Devil Made Me Do It. Now again, it's not the best in the Conjuring universe, however it's not the worst. I absolutely love what they do with this film. They stretched out the idea that, like, you know, that people start to believe in this stuff outside of them is very interesting. The take on the film is very interesting, but however there are still some issues, some pacing issues I think, here and there, and it's definitely the least of the scary side of the film series. However, what they were able to do with this, I think, you know, works within this film series, and I'm glad we got it. Next up we're going to be talking about is Zack Snyder's Justice League. You know, now the original film really did devise people. You know, Joss Whedon really did take the tone of what Zack Snyder was planning to do and completely ripped it up and did it his own Buffy/Avengers-esque style, and it doesn't work, unfortunately, because of what Zack Snyder done previously with, like, Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. It doesn't work within that sort of realm of things, because it's when you look at it, it's a Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and Justice League is a trilogy of films when you look at it. You know, I think they did rush into this whole thing of doing like a Justice League. However, that's me talking about the bad side of it. And those bad things still exist within this film. However, I do think this is one of the best films of the year, and I absolutely loved it. You know, this is one of the best DC films we've ever had, since arguably some of the older DC films that we've had in the past. And when I say older, I mean like the Batman, the Michael Keaton Batman of 1989, and the Superman, the Christopher Reeve Superman. I think, you know, ever since those films, that I haven't really screamed at a DC film where I've absolutely loved it until now. You know, people argue that The Dark Knight is one of them. Yes, I agree. However, I still have a lot of nostalgia growing up watching those older Batman and Superman films and loving those, that I got so used to them and the sort of quirkiness behind them, that when they brought out The Dark Knight and all that, it just felt a little bit darker. However, I think The Darkness does work with that, and it also works here with Justice League from Zack Snyder. Going back to horror, and the last horror film we are going to talk about of the year, that I remember watching anyway is Halloween Kills. I absolutely love Halloween Kills. You know, is it perfect? No. Is it a stalemate for what's coming? Yes. However, the execution is very well. You know, it feels like, well, it's definitely not one of the best of the franchise. It's certainly not the worst. You know, it's a Michael Myers film through and through. I didn't mind the mob mentality thing that they did in it. However, it was a bit too much. The ending, yes, pissed a lot of people off, pissed me off at the first watch. But when I watched it again, I understand it a lot more. And the fact that they killed off one of the characters I like, with a name I don't like, is unfortunate. However, I'm looking so forward to Halloween Ends in October, so I cannot wait to see that. Another film now that actually surprised me back in December when I watched it was it was November I watched this, and it was No Time to Die. No Time to Die was an absolutely amazing film. James Bond again can be hit and miss with me. Certain ones I can enjoy, certain ones I can't stand. However, Daniel Craig has brought something to the series where I've actually quite enjoyed every single one of his films. Pierce Brosnan, was one. It's one of those where it's like I've watched a few of the older ones, and I've either really enjoyed them or really hated them. Pierce Brosnan was one of those ones where I hated majority of his part 1, which is GoldenEye. I actually enjoyed GoldenEye, but the rest of Pierce Brosnan ones were a bit shit in my opinion. However, Daniel Craig has had a very decent run of James Bond, and he's had a very decent run of films. And I would say he's probably the one that's had the best run of James Bond films in those series. No Time to Die is now different, and they actually give Daniel Craig an ending which actually kills off Bond. It kills off James Bond in this film. And it was such a shock. I actually teared up as well when I watched it. Luckily I was watching it at home. But I actually teared up when I saw that they actually killed off James freaking Bond. Was not expecting it. And I think it makes the film a whole lot better. If they had just ended it where James Bond has sort of gone off with what is sort of his daughter, which I think they implied it was his daughter, and I think it is his daughter sort of thing. But, yeah, I think this was a very good ending for Daniel Craig, a very good ending for James Bond. And if they were to not do another James Bond film now, would be brilliant. Or continue the series on with somebody that's not a Bond, Give somebody else a chance to do something new with this that maybe doesn't follow what Ian Fleming has done with the books, and I hope I've got that name right. Moving on to another film that actually surprised me this year is Free Guy. Free Guy was very much one of those films where I thought it was going to be loved and hated by a bunch of people. There are still people who aren't too keen on it. However, I think it's universally loved. It's a better film than what I think we all were going to get. There's a decent story in there. Well-contained story, actually. One that doesn't really, showboat to sort of, it could have gone one or two ways. It could have gone the way it went, which was very good, or it could have gone down that sort of what it thinks of society in the video gaming world and the VR world. It could have gone down that route, which, of course, when people in films and TV shows try to convey that kind of world, doesn't always go well. When you sort of look at Chucky, for instance, the TV show Chucky, and you got the podcaster character in there, they do really well in there. They do well to sort of convey what it is like for a podcaster and how things go. And that is why, in this film we also get that with Free Guy. It's, it's very realistic, very funny, and it sort of does take a stab at people who are like that. However, it's in an enjoyable way, and I absolutely love Free Guy. So, of course, the very last film I'm going to be talking about, one that I'm not going to be talking about too much because I have done a full video on that. You can check that out on the channel right now. But, of course, my favourite film of the year is Spider-Man No Way Home. There's no doubt in my mind that this film is absolutely amazing. ultimate, superior, spectacular, all those words rolled into one. This is the perfect Spider-Man film, and it is, in my opinion, probably the second best MCU film we've ever got. There is some stuff in there that maybe people don't like, that I can't understand, but I absolutely love this film. I gave you some of the issues that I actually talked about in the big review. But yeah, this is absolutely one of the best films in the MCU. And it's the best film of 2021 in my opinion. And oh boy, we are finally here at the end of today's video. We've yapped on about some of the best films. We've yapped on about some of the best films. We've yapped on about some of the worst films of the year. Again, this is just some of my opinions. Not everyone's going to agree with everything. Some people might have liked Space Jam. Some people might have liked Snake Eyes. Some people might have liked Boss Level. It's just the same as people hating Halloween Kills, Malignant, and The Devil Made Me Do It. Fast and Furious 9 even. There are people out there who absolutely hate Malignant. And for me, it doesn't make sense, but that is people's opinion. This is what it's all about. We live in a society where everybody has their own opinion about everything. If we all had the same opinion about everything, we'd be bored to freaking death in this universe, I tell you now. But anyway, that's my video for today. We have got coming up the most anticipated films of the year. Something I'm going to try and get to you in the coming weeks. But don't worry, it is coming. This video was something that, I wanted to do. I was going to do two separate videos, talk about the best and talk about the worst on their own. Things didn't quite go the way I wanted it to, where they would have been released on the same weekend. Unfortunately, it's going to be released after the new year. But nonetheless, it's here. So of course, I will be doing the most anticipated films of the year. Again, it won't be a list. I will just talk about all the films I am looking forward to this year. I'm going to have to start compiling my list as soon as we are done today. And of course, we are going to get into Supernatural soon. Doing the same sort of thing I did with Buffy. Weekly videos talking about each season, each week, every Friday or Saturday, depending on how things go. Some weeks it might be a Friday, some weeks it might be a Saturday. But the plan is to do 5 weeks straight of that, have a break in between each of the 5 weeks. So it's going to be across 16, 17, 18 weeks. So yeah, we're going to be getting into that. Absolutely love Supernatural. Supernatural is my all-time favourite show. I think I started with Buffy because it's shorter, and just to sort of let me get used to that sort of formula quicker, so that when I come to do shows like Supernatural that I absolutely love, it's definitely one that it's going to be a little bit better than what I did with Buffy. Also, the series that I'll be doing after Supernatural, while I am not going to spoil it now, is a show that's ended, and another phenomenal show, one of my favourites as well. And we'll be starting that up as soon as Supernatural finishes. So we'll go from the Friday or the Saturday after we do season 15, and we will move straight into season 1 of this other show, which I will reveal down the line when I'm doing Supernatural. I'll give you a little hint every video just to try and let you know. But anyway, that's it for today. I know we have rambled on quite a bit, but there are the best and worst movies of 2021. We've had a good year for films. We've also had a very bad year for films as well. But definitely better than 2020, with the disappointments in the delays and everything. There are a lot of films coming out this year that are anticipated, and again, that list is coming to you this weekend coming, and I will see you then. But thanks for listening, guys, and I will see you next time. I've been Squirrel. This has been Squirrel, so yeah. Goodbye.